Hi, my name is Michelle, and I'd love to share my experience with naturopathic medicine because it has personally changed my life and the lives of all of my family members. So, I met Dr. Lexi back in 2016, just a few months after my oldest son, Troy, had been diagnosed with autism. He would have had an Aspergers or high-functioning autism diagnosis, but it had been rolled into the general autism diagnosis at that point. So Troy was not born autistic. He developed normally as a child. He was social, funny, a little shy, but, had his own little personality, really smart. And then when he was 7 years old, when my family and I were living in Japan, he just disappeared over the course of about 2 days. And it was so dramatic. He stopped showing emotion on his face. He stopped socializing with his brother and the rest of our family. He became obsessed with the train system, and he had retreated into his own world. He was gone. My little boy was gone at 7 years old. Because we were in Japan, we just attributed all of these strange things to culture shock. And we didn't even consider the possibility of autism until he was 12 years old. So this went on for a long time. When things got really bad and we finally considered autism, it was very clear that he met those symptoms, so we had him officially diagnosed. And at the diagnosis, the doctor had no hope for me. He will be autistic for the rest of his life. And I asked him, is there anything I can do for the physical symptoms that often accompany autism? And he said, oh, maybe try some fish oil or something, but there's not really much you can do. So with that kind of diagnosis, I had nothing to lose by looking for other options. So for the next several months, I researched every possible thing I could about autism and how to help and what's going on. And I found naturopathic medicine, and I found stories of people whose children have recovered from autism completely apart from conventional medicine. So we gave Dr. Lexi a phone call and met, and she brought us through some tests that we never would have been able to do in conventional medicine. Tests that looked for food sensitivities, tests that checked for heavy metals and his vitamin levels, and and to measure his gut health, which is very important. And we identified 4 major food groups that Troy was very, very sensitive to and were causing chronic inflammation in him: dairy, gluten, eggs, and yeast. So we dropped those 4 foods 100%, actually, for our entire family, because the rest of us showed at least gluten and dairy sensitivities. And not even a week later, I heard my son Troy laugh for the first time in 5 or 6 years. He was back. It's a miracle. It's just a miracle. And he started participating in our family's social life again. He would speak without being spoken to, which he hadn't done since he was 7 years old. And he was even able to help us understand what it was like being autistic. I remember one time he was explaining the heightened senses and how certain feelings on his skin or light in his eyes caused actual physical pain for him. And he said sometimes the wind would be blowing on him, and he said he would just hate the wind. But now those things are much lessened in him. He can tolerate loud noises much better, being out in crowds. he has improved so much. He's recovered so much from autism that I do believe he could lose his diagnosis if we went back to the doctor and pushed for it. But we are happy just to have our son back. And so for the rest of our family, we also went off gluten and dairy. And for me personally, when I was in Japan, I developed horrible psoriasis, scalp psoriasis. It was just unbearably itchy all the time because I was also having chronic inflammation. I also dealt with cystic acne since I was in my early 20s, and very painful periods. And I had a diagnosis of chronic fatigue syndrome, which just meant they had no idea why I was so tired all the time. And all of those things resolved themselves just a few weeks after I stopped eating gluten and dairy. I have not been this healthy in 20 years. And so we are so thankful to Dr. Lexi and naturopathic medicine for saving our lives. My youngest son had always struggled in school to pay attention. I'm sure he would be diagnosed ADHD. And once he dropped gluten and dairy, he got straight A's in school all year long for the first time ever. So we are just thrilled. And my husband, his physical symptoms have been much, much better. He has always had severe pain in his knees and his joints, and that has greatly lessened. And he's enjoyed some other benefits of a gluten-free, dairy-free lifestyle. So we are incredibly thankful. Most of all, we give thanks to God for showing us this information, and my hope is that this story could help other people just like it helped me. If I hadn't heard other people's stories, I don't think I would have been brave enough to try this, and it certainly has not been an easy journey. And my son Troy still struggles with many things. He missed all of those formative years between 7 and 12, but our lives are changed forever, and we will never go back. So thank you for listening.